Hey guys, how you doing? It's Alex coming at you once again. Been a busy summer. I was in Chicago for a couple of weeks, visiting family at the end of July. Didn't get to do a whole lot of digging. I did get to go to one store, Record Wonderland in the Chicago suburbs. Um, I picked up three really nice records, which I will show now. The first one, Vista by Miriam Brown. I think this is from like 74, 75 on Impulse, of course. No, this one, yeah, 1975, recorded 75. This is one that I've been looking for quite a long time. I know I've mentioned I'm a huge Miriam Brown fan. For whatever reason, this one has just been very elusive. Doesn't pop up a lot online even. Yeah, beautiful, kind of laid back. Has some of the some of the vibes as similar vibes to some of the like Pharoah Sanders records from the early '70s on Impulse, um, but does not get quite as bombastic as some of those records. This one features a bunch of people: Anthony Davis, Stanley Cowell, Reggie Workman, Ed Blackwell, Jimmy Hops. An appearance by Harold Budd actually here on Celeste and Gong on side two. Um, yeah, beautiful, beautiful stuff. Really happy to grab that one. Really nice shape too. Pick this one up there as well. Hymnology, the Terumasa Hino Quintet. Terumasa Hino, the Japanese trumpet player. It was recorded in 1969. It was actually an original Japanese pressing. This Tact Jazz Series label. I don't think that's a promo. I think that's the regular label. I think it's like a subsidiary of Columbia Records. Yeah, you can kind of see the Columbia thing there. Anyway, absolutely brilliant, fusiony. Definitely, obviously has a Electric Miles vibe going on here. In fact, track 2 is it's called track 1 is titled Like Miles. So obviously very consciously influenced by Miles. In fact, that may look familiar a little bit, huh? But yeah, I mean, definitely not overly derivative, and the playing is absolutely fantastic. Every track is fantastic. There's basically four long tracks, two on each side. The aforementioned Like Miles, then Electric Zoo, Hymnology, and Dupe, and yeah, fantastic gatefold with these guys looking pretty slick with the aviators and the Bruce Lee shirtless look going on there. Really nice find. A record I did not expect to find at a relatively small shop, outside of Chicago. And the last one I picked up there is one playing in the background here. The late Joseph Jarman with Don Moye, of course, Art Ensemble members. This one is Black Paladins from 1980, recorded in late 1979, and then put out on 1980 on the Black Italian fantastic label Black Saint, and with Johnny D on it as well, who I think is an underrated player and shows up in a ton of fantastic records. Yeah, kind of a mixture of some more Afrocentric spiritual things, and then stuff like what you hear now, which is a little bit more avant-garde, a little more atmospheric. And they cover Humility in the Light of the Creator as well on side A. Most of the other ones are composed by Joseph Jarman, and yeah, so it's a trio saying fantastic, really cool stuff. I guess there's another version of this record, same year, that's a black cover, sort of a reverse, white font black cover. But yeah, if you ever see this, it's not really an expensive record. Absolutely highly recommended. I did go digging yesterday, but I'll show those records later. I'm still cleaning them up a little bit. I have been buying a lot of stuff online, just some pretty good deals, and just things that are really hard to find in the wild. This kind of a combination of an online buy, but at the same time I did kind of work for it a little bit. The record in question being this one, Solo Percussion by Cleve Pozar, percussionist, originally from Minnesota. He spent some time in Michigan in the early 60s, met Bob James at the University of Michigan, studied under him. He actually put out, or he's featured in this fantastic record with the Bob James Trio on ESP. No, his actual name is Robert Pozar. That's what he's credited as on here. This one also features Bar Phillips on bass. It's a killer record. It's really weird, really free. It's got a bunch of electronic like samples and stuff. I mean, it's really quite ahead of its time. It's a really cool record. I don't think I've seen this shown on the VC. Definitely worth checking out there. Yeah, see, Robert Ashley also was involved with this one. Yeah, some of the electronics. So yeah, this is killer. So yeah, Robert Pozar, he only was featured in a handful of records, but all of them absolute classics. And of course, he eventually met, Bill Dixon in New York, and Bill thought highly enough of him to feature him in his, masterpiece. A record that's been shown quite a bit on the VC, Intents and Purposes. There's actually an original Canadian pressing. I'm not sure why this was put out in just the US and Canada, but so Robert Pozar plays drums on here. Let's see, you see on all the tracks. Yeah. So here he's credited as Robert Frank Pozar. So yeah, he had a few different names that he went under. So yeah, he when he met Bill Dixon, I think in the early '60s, and then Bill invited him to the 1964 October Revolution, concert series that Bill Dixon coordinated. Arguably, some of the most important, free jazz, improvisational jazz concerts that, in the history of jazz, really. So yeah, he played in that, and then he, I believe he moved back, or he moved to Boston when he recorded this. He released this himself. It's pretty much a private press thing, and it's just himself. It's very hard to describe. the back does have the kind of some notes about some of the theory behind the pieces. He uses a tape delay machine called an Echoplex. I'm sure some of you guys that are musicians are probably familiar with it, or have at least are familiar with kind of what it does. And so he's playing, a variety of percussion instruments, marimbas, drums, tablas, and bells, and he overdubs, different effects, and so it's very dense. It's definitely not traditional jazz or even free jazz. It's not fully improvised either. It's definitely very well thought out. There's not a whole lot of information on Mr. Pozar, even online. There's a couple of really interesting interviews that really kind of give some background, and it seems like the guy really had an interesting sense of humor. He self-describes as an alcoholic, and was clearly a genius. He was also an inventor. In fact, for this record, the whole setup, was something that he created and that he set up, which is quite innovative. Check out that font there, Mr. Buttery. I think that's pretty cool. So yeah, I've been looking for this record for a long time. It's one of those records that you see online once in a while that the hardcore diggers I've been onto for many years. And so I was just kind of going on Discogs, just kind of looking at a list of Discogs members who said they had this record, and one of the folks on there seemed to be a record store, because obviously the name was clearly indicating that he was doing business there, and he did have a bunch of records listed online. So I shot him a message. I said, hey, if you have this record and if it's for sale, let me know. He responded fairly quickly, and he said, I do not have that record. I'm not sure what happened to it. So a few weeks later, and actually a day after I came back from my trip from Chicago, he sent me a message saying, hey, I found the record. Here's what it costs. And it was actually a pretty reasonable price considering how rare these are. And I said, yeah, send it over. I would have loved to pick this up in person, but I was already back here in California by the time that he sent me a message. So I mean, it's in beautiful shape. The record's in beautiful shape. There's very little wear at all on the cover. So absolutely ecstatic to add this to the collection, and to do a little research and find out. I think there's a couple of later videos of him later in life. I think he was a teacher as well later in life. Then actually he got into Latin music and Afro-Cuban music, so he played with a lot of those bands towards the end of his career. So he was a guy versed in just all types of percussion, and really dedicated his entire life to his craft. It's unfortunate that there's so few records, and especially from his sort of 60s and 70s period, when he was clearly at the center of a lot of what's going on in New York with the new music. But we do have a few, and they're all fantastic and worth seeking out. And I really think his presence is very much felt in all of these recordings, even though he's one of, he's not the leader on any of these records. But so yeah, I think this is something that will be reissued possibly, although Mr. Pozar died earlier this year. Now, I believe his wife is still alive, and I know she was a huge supporter of his, and I would think that she would definitely be open to, if indeed she has the master tapes, or if she can license something digital. This is music that really needs to be deserves a much wider audience. And again, it's not just for the jazz folks. I mean, this is really for anybody who is interested in daring music. So yeah, that's all I had for today. I'll probably come on sometime next week, maybe show some of the things I picked up, other things that I picked up recently. Until then, take care, guys.